how does learning happen, right? And what is sort of the and it begins with Elisha ben Abuya, who's one of my favorite characters in the Talmud. If you've never studied him before, you should absolutely do so. And he says basically, when the person who learns the child, what are they like? And they're like an ink on a brand new writing sheet of paper. So, right, so this is many years before before the philosophes and tabula rasa sort of comes about, right? When you have a brand new student, they can learn like a brand new sheet of paper. They're ready to soak it all up. And for that person who learns with an old man, what are they like? They're like ink on a rubbed writing sheet. That is, right, you have a lot of erasers, you have other things. There's the history of the learning that you've done. And on the one hand, that's great because it's a history of the learning, but also sometimes it's hard to read, right? Sometimes the old learning that you've had come before gets in the way of things that you have in the present, but neither here nor there. And so Rabbi Yossi continues, one who learns from the young, to what are they compared? To one who eats unripe grapes. And drinks wine from the vat. And one who learns from the old, to what is he compared? To one who eats ripe grapes and one who drinks old wine, right? That is that with wisdom and with time, the learning that you have can be deeper, more robust, etc. And finally, where the title of the shir comes in, sorry, and Rabbi said, don't look at the container that the wine is in. Don't look at the container, don't look at the container, but what's inside it. That is, you can have a new container of old wine and an old container that is full of new wine, right? So in some ways, right, the argument that I'm trying to make by citing this particular text and what I hope to launch into is as much as Rabbi Garth gives Sefaria and me, I think, more credit than we deserve in terms of transforming Jewish learning, right? There would be no Sefaria and no transformation of that, if it's that much, without the sort of Torah text and traditional classical text that we have. So for those who have never seen it before, Sefaria we define basically as a living library of Jewish texts. And our goal, a very simple goal, is essentially to try and create an online platform on both the web and on mobile apps that allows Jews to engage with the Jewish written tradition in the original language and in translation, and we make it available completely for free. More about that later. But basically, at any given point, you can log on to Sefaria.org and you can, God willing, immerse yourselves in 3,000 years of Jewish learning. And right, the way that you do that is actually pretty straightforward, hopefully. When you launch the site, you basically have two options. Let's say you know exactly what you're looking for. You just pop up right here in your search box and you type it. So let's say I want the first parak, the first pasuk of Genesis, and lo and behold, I'm right there. Alternatively, at any time, you can click right on this little hamburger menu at Sefaria, and you can get our whole table of contents list. So if I wanted to get to Genesis, I could click right on back in and get there the same way. And that's all well and good. So this is nice in the sense that we have lots and lots of Jewish texts available in translation, but that's not the real chiddush that we have at Sefaria. What we end up doing, one of the big things that we've done is once you digitize the work, one of the neat things about it, and you see this already in the Gemara, right? When the Gemara, or even a sort of classical, compilation of Torah text, right? You have the main text in the center, and you have the commentary sort of spiraling out around it. We do the same thing here, except we do it a little bit differently. So on any pasuk, on any segment of text on Sefaria, you can click on it, and immediately you get this right-hand column. Now, obviously, not every text has as much and is as tightly robust as Genesis 1:1, but we have, on any given comment, we have 392 commentaries on this particular translation, including our classical commentaries, Rashi at the top, Ibn Ezra, Ramban, further down, and down further, and so on and so forth. You'll notice these little EN things for those who are stuck only dealing with translation. You can click on them at any moment. You click in, and voila, you have text and commentary. We have, in addition to commentary, we have other links in Tanakh. So for example, these are other parts of Tanakh that cite Genesis 1:1, that have a reference to it. We have Targum, which are early translations of the text. We have the links in the Mishnah that exist. We have links in the Talmud that cite this particular translation of text, and so on and so forth. Midrash, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the neat things that you're able to do here is, because we have these links, you're able to simply open up one tag into another. So I can start here with Breshit. I can go into this first Rashi on Genesis. I can say, oh, this is an interesting text. I wonder what else is on it. And I say, oh, look at this. There's a medrash attached to it. I can click right into the medrash that's attached to this particular translation. And now I have multiple tabs that are open. And I can keep on going, right? This will scroll for as much as I want to scroll this to at any given moment and close everything back down at any given moment. So, right, as opposed to, if you see behind me, I have lots of my wife's books of Talmud. I think it's a Talmud shelf behind us over there, right? We've condensed that entire shelf and many of the other ones in this room and lots of other books that we don't have on these shelves into a tightly compound thing that you have available and accessible to you. And this creates really interesting and fabulous opportunities in addition to just the links of text. Because one of the neat things that you're able to do is when you create these linkages is you're able to look at these things in interfaces and in ways that you've never done before, right? So for example, we have this little section on our website called visualizations, and right, all that link data that you just saw, right? So if we go back to that main site for just a moment, so if we go back to that Sefaria, that Genesis 1:1, forgive me. Sefaria, Tanakh, Genesis. So if we go back to Genesis 1:1, you'll see right over here, right before, we have some 14 different links to just this, in the Talmud, to just this particular pasuk. Right? So this, as we scroll down, right, as we scroll down and as it updates, you'll see this updates now. So the fourth pasuk has 8 sections to Talmud, the fifth has 14, and so on and so forth. So we can scroll and this will update. So if I wanted to, for example, just look with Rashi, as I scroll down here in the main column, my Rashis will update also as I go. So it's a neat little interface that way. But one of the cool things that you could do is once we have this data digitized, we can begin to visualize it in different ways, right? So this is that same data connection between the Talmud and Tanakh. So, right, so in Genesis, we can now see every single link and reference that exists in Genesis and how it links to Tanakh. So, right, so in Genesis 1, right, we saw before those like 14 links that were right over there. You could see them and where they go in terms of visual view of where these particular texts go. Now, on the one hand, this is kind of, I think, really beautiful and lovely, but on the other, it actually allows you to create really interesting questions and conversations about books. So for example, those of us who know the text, right, if we were to look at the Book of Esther, right, if we look at the Book of Esther in depth, right, not surprisingly for anyone who studied the Talmud before, you'll see that most of the links to the Book of Esther come right back to Masechet Megillah, right? But there's also all these other little oddball things that you can see immediately. You can ask yourself, I wonder what that one connection is in Masechet Brachot, and what does it have to do with, right? I wonder what that one specific section in Hulin, which is about basically kosher animal slaughter, is, and why are they referencing the Book of Esther? And so you can create very quickly and very easily, you can get very quick explanations and visualizations about the kinds of things that are happening. And one of the things that allows you to do is it allows you to create more interesting new interfaces, right, for learning. So one of the other examples that I love to show on this visualization part is what we call, and by the way, we have this not just for Talmud and Tanakh, we have this for Talmud and Mishnah Torah. So if you wanted to, for example, visualize the how halacha, right, at least according to the Rambam, where it comes from, you could see all of those citations happen in that particular moment. You could see a similar sort of thing from the Mishnah Torah to the Shulchan Aruch, and see where these lines cross and don't cross. And so you get really much, right? So again, interestingly here, you have a lot more single lines, which makes sense because the Rambam organized them one way, and the Shulchan Aruch organized them another, and so you get really neat things here. Or my favorite one, right? You get Tanakh to Mishnah Torah. So you get specifically, right, here are all the views of where the halachas theoretically come in from, right? Lots in Genesis and Exodus, and right, lots in Vayikra, obviously. But the other interesting thing here is all the other places that the Rambam, in the course of his translation and codification of Jewish law, begins to sort of pull from other places, right? So he pulls from Tehillim, he pulls from Psalms, he pulls from Mishlei, from Proverbs, and even like Job and other places. So there's the really cool thing I think about this particular visualization is all of the ancillary effects that sort of show up in that particular way. other visualizations that I think are particularly neat. And I love the visualizations because these are things that couldn't really be done before we digitized this stuff in the Torah. My other favorite example, this is one that shows you when Rashi references himself, right? When Rashi references Torah and explains Torah by looking through another group. So those who have studied Rashi before, you know that when Rashi cites a pasuk, when Rashi is commenting on a pasuk, when Rashi is commenting on a verse, he often cites another verse in the process of doing it. And so what you see here, right, very quickly and immediately, you see all the times that these references happen, how frequently they happen, where they happen, but also you see how dense that Rashi is, right? This is one of those things that, like, I am not a Torah scholar and will never be a Torah scholar the way that Rashi is. But one of the neat things to me is at this particular, right, Rashi knew and memorized the entire Torah ostensibly and was able to make these links no problem. And in some ways, right, the nice thing here is that with Sefaria, you don't have to be the great Talmud Chachamim of the past, right? We can find those linkages and find those references in ways that are really easier to do before. And it becomes a really fascinating and I think amazing sort of way of democratizing Torah. So this is really all well and good for those of us who have a good sense of Torah already. They know, okay, I know what Parsha I want to study today, or maybe I don't, but I know I want to study the Parsha, right? So I can go in and I could say, okay, I know I want to study the Parsha, so I'm going to click on the Parsha of the week, or I want to see this week's Haftorah, or I've been doing Daf Yomi and I can connect to that. But what about for those of us who or like, right, or I know what Tanakh is and I know what the Mishnah is, but I don't know what these other weird texts are. What's this Chassidut thing, or this Musar, or what are these responsive texts, right? So one of the things that we also do on Sefaria is we create opportunities for users to interconnect with these texts in multiple ways. And we have these things called the topics pages. So one of the ways to access the topics pages, again, is through the table of contents and then to drill down. So let's say we wanted to know holidays or Torah portions or other things. But the other way is to just search for it. So I'm gonna, for those who type in the topic you want me to search for in the chat box right now, and the first or second person to do it will be the winner, and hopefully we'll find it. And be as esoteric as you wish to be, hopefully. And hopefully we have it. So go for it. Chat box. Use of towels on Shabbat. Dessert. Is it dessert or desert? I can't spell. Dessert. Let's try dessert. Fasting for 17. Oh, racism. Okay, I'm going to do the racism one. Why the heck not, right? You all can't, it'll be fine. So, right, so I'm searching racism, and you notice right over here, we have this little hashtag. That means it's a topic. We have hashtag racism. Before I click it, I just want to do some of these other things, right? Fast of the 17th, right? The 17th of Tammuz, which is happening tomorrow. Fast days, fast. We could probably get to it that way. Dessert. I'm curious. I don't know if we have it, but I'm curious to see right now. We have, deserts. Is that deserts? Deserts. Oh, well. All right, so we'll go with racism, just because. So we click on our topics tab. And what are the neat things about topics? So let's say you don't know anything about Torah, but you know a lot about racism, right? So we have here, interesting, I went this way. So we tell you the specific topic that it's in under social issues. We have related topics that might exist to racism, that is white supremacy and violence. And then we have here, you're seeing a series of source sheets that have been created. These are user-generated source sheets. You can see Rabbi Joshua Bolton of the Brown Rizdi Hillel has an interesting source sheet on, is one permitted to punch a white supremacist in the face? Great source sheet, by the way. It's the #1 source sheet on Sefaria because it went viral. But I'm going to pick also the fast of Tammuz. I'll pick the fast days just to show you something else a little bit around here. Because on most topic pages, we get both a mix of sources and source sheets, right? So on the one hand, right, so fasting, we have some sheets that are available on this particular thing. But we also have a number of sources that are available. So we've done here, right, the heavy lifting of categorizing through algorithm and through some cataloging through some fancy algorithms to pull up what are the core texts about fasting. And then if you notice over here, so we know that this is fasting is in the category of holidays, so we can go up higher if we wanted to. And we see these other related terms. So somebody who asked the 17th of Tammuz, that was Lily. So we can click on the 17th of Tammuz. We see specifically the sources that are related to the 17th of Tammuz, which here are Masechet Ta'anit, which is the Talmudic section devoted to fast. We have Masechet Rosh Hashanah, which deals with calendar, so these are not surprising. Jerusalem Talmud on Ta'anit, and then we get into other particular things here. Sfat Emet is a commentary on the Torah, and so on and so forth. And then we have also a series of source sheets of people who have created 17th of Tammuz source sheets. And each of these also will lead us to other source sheets that may be interesting to us in that particular fashion also. And so it's another way of accessing the Torah, even if you have no particular ideas or models in mind. And I actually really love our source sheets, which again are varying quality. But one of the neat things about our source sheets is when you click in a particular source sheet, again, these work just like the reader view also. So like, right, this particular source sheet is by Benjamin Adler. I don't know who he is, so I'm gonna click in. He's apparently a rabbi at Out of Israel congregation in New Jersey, great. So I come back over here. And one of the neat things here is, again, if I like this text in Sefaria and I want to see it more in context, I come back in, I have my same exact view that was here before. I can click on the text itself and it loads up and I have the whole page in context all over again. I can click on this particular pasuk itself, right? And I can see what other people wrote on these sheets. So now I'm seeing the 38 other sheets that are connected to this. Many of these, not surprisingly, are related to fast days because Sefaria is talking about fast days. But again, so we can come into here and find a whole bunch of other texts that are just related, that have been created by the wisdom of the crowds. And again, what we have here that's happening, and one of the really magical things, is we have Torah happening and conversations around Torah happening, right? Across time, across space, just like in the Gemara, only facilitated by a little bit of technology that really just allows us to engage in that particular way. So it's a really powerful tool in that regard. Other things that we have that are also super valuable in the Sefaria land. Oh, other things you can do, right? Let's say you've clicked into a text, right? You've gotten yourself into a midrashic text and you are the Sefer HaYashar, but you don't know what this particular text is, or you want to get to a specific part of the text that's not there. At any page on Sefaria, you can click right over here, the title of the text, and you get the structure of what this text looks like, a little explanation of what the text is, and you get the structures of where these things are, and you can navigate to it specifically also. So maybe you know, for example, that I want to look, I know what I'm looking for is in the Mishnah Torah. I don't know where it is, but I know it's somewhere in the Mishnah Torah, if I can spell it properly, right? So I know it's somewhere in the Mishnah Torah, but I don't know where. But now at this point, I can go through my table of contents. I can click into the specific that I wanted to, and I can, again, go from chapter to specific chapter and verse in that particular way. So, right, game changer, as Rabbi Garth was saying, in terms of doing Torah study online, particularly for those of you who know or have a sense of where you want to go already, but even for those of you who don't. But one of the other really neat and spectacular things about Sefaria that I particularly like, and that I think is one of the most important, valuable things, is right, not only have we made this site freely available and freely accessible, one of the other things that we can do, have we done for it, and this will get to Janet's question, which is what I do for Sefaria, is what Sefaria has done is we've made all of our code completely available, right? So if you wanted to download any of the code that powers Sefaria, or if you wanted to download any of the texts that power Sefaria, you can download them immediately, no questions asked. So right here, I can do it straight from the website. I can click on Genesis, and I can scroll down to the page. Well, that'll teach me to try to scroll. I can scroll down to the page, and I have this little download text. I can download any version I want to, just as a plain text file. And I can download that to my computer. Get there in a second. Download that text, and lo and behold, I now have the entire JPS 1917 Tanakh on my computer screen to do what I want with, to copy and paste, to use it as I want to. And the other neat thing about it is any text that you'll see on Sefaria, as part and parcel for it being on Sefaria, a requirement for all of the texts that are on there, is that all of the texts on Sefaria need to be licensed, with two big exceptions. They need to be licensed as what's called Creative Commons, Creative Commons Creative Commons by license, or less restrictive. And by that I mean any text that you find on Sefaria is, we have made sure before it got onto the site that it is usable for you however you want to use it. That is, you could theoretically download this JPS 1917 Tanakh, print it out, bind it in a book form, and if you wanted to sell it, you could sell it. But more importantly, right, you can download that particular text. You can add your own commentary to it. You can create your own derivative works on it. You can create your own commentary and make that happen also. Now, we'd like you to do that on Sefaria, and I'll show you how to do that a little bit later. But one of the neat things about it is that this is not just a free project for you to use. This is a free culture project. That is, we believe at Sefaria that we believe at Sefaria that our Jewish tradition, the Torah broadly speaking, is the Yerusha of the Jewish people, is the inheritance of the Jewish people. And in order for the Jewish people to actually inherit the Torah, it means that folks really shouldn't have a copyright over it. Now, that's not to say that folks who do translation work shouldn't be paid for their work. We have lots of modern translations on our site. So as I think Will just posted in the chat, we have some quality of the translations. We have New JPS, we have the Steinschaltz Talmud, we have lots of other things, and I'll show you how to get those in a second. We've had to pay an arm and a leg to get those particular translations, particularly the better ones. And a good portion of our budget every year goes to freeing and liberating these texts. But here's the thing, right? Even if Sefaria, the software project, goes up and belly up next year, God forbid, but even if we go out of business, all of the texts that we've created on Sefaria and all of the will be available forever because of the way that we've managed to license them and get them out in available things. So that said, right, for those who are looking at various translations of the text, I forgot to point this out before, we'll do it right now. On any text that you're on, how'd I get there? On any text you want. So if I click this little Aleph button at a given moment, I can toggle my language to just Hebrew, Hebrew and English, just Hebrew. I can change the layout for those who prefer a more centered Mitsuda style sitter experience. I can turn on and off Aliyah markers for those texts that have it. I can change the font size for those who need larger things. I can turn on and off vocalization. Let's say I don't want trope markings and I just want text, or maybe I don't want any of that because I just want Hebrew. I can do that also. But then one of the things that you're able to do is, again, in our connections panel, we can click over here, and way down at the bottom, we've got this little translations tab, right? And so from here, I can select the various translations that I want, right? So my English right now, I'm looking at the 1985 JPS translation, but maybe I don't want that. Maybe I want my 1917 because I really like the these and the thous, right? Or maybe I want the Rashi Chumash by Schrager Silverstein, which has Rashi translations basically inside and in line with the text, so I can switch to that. Maybe I want Koren's translation because I feel like it's a little bit frummer, or the Mitsuda translation because I think that's still even more orthodox normative because whatever, in that particular way, I can translate to that one. Or let's say, right, I want my, notice, right, one of the things we have is we're expanding to other languages also. So we have, for example, French versions of Tanakh, we have German versions of Tanakh, we have someone's doing a community Finnish translation of Tanakh. This is Yehoyash's Yiddish version of Tanakh that exists on the site that's in the public domain. So we have a number of translations that are available in that particular thing. I see Tamar's posted that font sizes regarding learning disabilities. Sefaria also, for those who need it, should be available and accessible using accessibility technologies. We spent 6 months last year, the engineering team, making sure that it worked with screen readers. So it's a site that, right, when we talk about the Torah being the Yerusha of the Jewish people, Big Adol, we really mean it. And so, like, one of the things that we've done also is and in doing that and digitizing some of these texts, one of the things we've been able to do is make texts that were not available to some folks before available to them. So for example, right, there's a particular translation of, there's a particular tool called the Jastrow Dictionary that's used in Talmudic study. It is not the kind of tool that could be navigated independently for unsighted users. Basically, someone knows how to use the Jastrow, could theoretically tell someone how to do it, but it's not the kind of text that could actually be visible and viable. So we made sure, in addition to wanting to have Jastrow on our site, which now you see over here in the column, that this particular text would be readable and usable by folks who are using screen readers also. So like when we say we're really focusing on the full canon of availability, we do it. What do I do for Sefaria, since Janet asked? I'm technically a software engineer there, which is a funny sort of thing. So all the interfaces that you're seeing, I have some hand in building them. I am not the only one who builds them. We're a team of about 18 full-time equivalents now. About half of that is engineering, half of that is non-engineering. Things that I've done on Sefaria, the iOS apps, the iOS and the Android app have been my baby. And then the thing I'll show you right now, just briefly, is we have this tool called a source sheet builder tool, which allows you to, oh, I'm going to show you the new interface that I'm not supposed to show you. Sorry, sneak peek. Disable new editor. You didn't see that. Sheet/new. We have ability on our source sheet tool, right? For you, right? You wanted to create a shear or you wanted to create a particular source sheet. So I can now, in any given moment, I can type in very briefly, I want Genesis 1.1. I can add the sheet source to my text. And then you say, you know what? I like this, but I want to find the connections to this. And now I want to add all of the Rashis that are connected to Genesis 1.1. So I click on it, and now I've clicked on all the Rashis that are connected to it, and I click add to sheet. So now I have the 3 Rashis that are connected to it. And now let's say I want to add my own question or my own comment about it. And I can say, this is really interesting. What do you think? Right, and now I have that particular thing that I've added to it. If I want to, on top of this, I can add in YouTube videos or other images on top of my source sheet. And each of these, once we do it, are then available immediately on the site after we click save, private by default, but visible to you and other people afterward. And again, right there on the site for anyone to navigate and to visible. So real game changer in terms of navigating Torah that way. And also about creating your own particular things. So that's the hat that I tend to wear in Sefaria land. I serve as one of the engineers. And it's a really fun and amazing gig because we get to right build interfaces and experiences that are otherwise not necessarily that we know are used by literally thousands and thousands and thousands of people every day. We had 1 million, I think, viewers on the website last year in total. It's just an amazing experience to sort of be engaged in the particular Torah. But again, the neat thing for me about it is that because we open source our code, and because we open source our code, and because we create opportunities for other developers to engage with Sefaria. Do we have any other developers on this call right now? I just want to get a sense of who's around. Wave fast if you do. I see at least 2. So one of the neat things that we have on Sefaria also that's pretty neat about it is code written in any language. It's all fun. I'll get to funding in a second. One of the neat things about Sefaria more broadly is because we have an open platform and our texts are open and available, it allows other folks to create tools that on our platform. So for those who have the capacity to do so, we actually just launched a contest yesterday asking you to basically build really interesting and cool stuff with some prize money. But some of the other powered by Sefaria projects that exists, this is a project called Shnayim.com, which basically, right, there's this traditional way of learning Torah is where you're supposed to read, you know, the Shnai Mikra Targum called Shnai Mikra, where basically what you're doing is you're reading the Torah in translation, you're reading the Torah twice. You're reading the Torah every week. You should be reading the Torah both in the original language and in the translation. Targum in their context means literally the Aramaic, and this is a website that allows you to do that for the weekly parsha. And they're pulling their data from Sefaria. This is another page that's giving you an alternate Talmud interface if you'd like to use it. So let's say I wanted to look at Berachot 2a. If you didn't like Sefaria's interface for whatever reason, we're sorry, but this is one that's more sort of straightforward and allows you to inline very briefly just read the specific pasuk, have the Rashi right there up and next to it, right, have the Shulchan Aruch right up there next to it. So for those who are more engaged in a particular learning scholar that way. Anyone have an Alexa? Anyone, some of you? This was created by one of our summer interns. This is an Alexa skill for Sefaria. So basically say, Alexa, read me the first chapter in Genesis, and it will, using the Sefaria API, read you the first chapter in Genesis. This is one of my favorite things that is slightly far-flung. This is called qualified cantillation. Do we have any Torah laners in the group? I saw Jack is here, right? So this is a neat sort of tool, and Shulamit I see also. This is a neat tool where given any series of tropes, right? So let's say I want to see all of the trope phrases that start with tipcha, which apparently is 16% of the Torah. And now 30% of those go to Sof Pasuk, another 27 go to Et Nachta, 20% go to Munach. So you can begin to see where the particular trope phrases are, right? So Tipcha Munach, Tipcha Munach Et Nachta, Mercha Munach Kataon, right? Whatever, fine. And you can see specifically here where those specific Pasukim are. So I don't know if you actually, right, there's some right when the Masoretic text sort of codified the trope markings in a particular way, there was a particular way that that had that happen in that particular way. This is a link. I'll show you where this link is. She'll be a little bit later on. This is not a Sefaria thing. This is someone who's built it with Sefaria. So one of the neat things that happens here is you can actually, again, interface with the particular Torah in other particular ways and learn the particular things in a particular way. Could you comment on Daf Yomi in Sefaria? Sure. Daf Yomi exists on Sefaria. I don't know if this is the answer to the question. If you go to our main menu, you'll see down here a whole bunch of calendar pages. So this is Parshat HaShavua, which is the weekly Parsha, Haftarah, Daf Yomi. So basically, you can click on the Daf Yomi at any given moment, and it will bring you to the Daf of the day. Based on your local calendar. We also have other calendars that are out here also. So those who learn according to the 929 cycle or the daily Mishnah, for those who do the daily Rambam, if you have any Chabadnikim or others on there, so on and so forth. You can also do Daf a week, which is much more my pace because I cannot do Daf Yomi. It is just too fast for me. But you're able to do it that way. And essentially interacting with Sefaria is the same sort of way here. You're able to look at the Daf, engage with a particular text in that particular way, and focus it that way. Questions on, is there a tool for laning different cantorial styles? This summer, my intern is working on getting audio, particularly laning on Sefaria. We will not have, at the beginning to start, we'll have basically just Avery Binder Ashkenaz, God willing. But we have a bead on some Yemenite Torah reading for those who are interested, and we hope to include other sorts of audio, including shirim, just regular plain text of reading also for those who want to brush up on reading. So we're very much moving into this world and space where we want to have additional media, not just text on the site. We want to have audio, we want to have video content, we want to have other multimedia image content, including manuscripts, images of manuscripts, and so on and so forth. So we have a particular deal that's there. Laning for Haftarah and Megillah too. Yeah, we'll get there eventually. Those who are interested in laning apps, there's another app that I've done that's not in the world of Sefaria called Pocket Torah. And there's a specific difference between Sefaria and Bar Ilan. The most obvious one is we're free and Bar Ilan is not. But beyond that, Bar Ilan has lots of stuff that we don't, particularly in the modern responsa. So if you're looking for anything in the modern era, we are not as good as Bar Ilan in that particular context. If you're looking for different shitas, like for those folks who want to know, well, this particular Talmud printed in this place has the text this way, but this particular Talmud printed in this place has it slightly differently, we don't do that either. Sefaria, we say basically, right, Bar Ilan is amazing for scholars, Sefaria is looking for 90% of the text that 90% of the people want 90% of the time. And so, right, we know that this is helpful and valuable to academics. We know this is helpful and valuable to rabbis and Jewish educators, but we really want this site, our target audience is really just like your regular Jews in the pews. And even certain changes that we've been making to the sites, including our topics page and that whole interface, and some other changes that we hope to be rolling out over the next 18 months, are really focused on folks who are curious learners about Torah more broadly in that particular way. So, and that in part, right, so that's the particular thing there. Other things that we have also on Sefaria, right, because we have this ability to because we believe in the possibility of sharing and connecting with one another, we have this little web pages tab, right? So over here, you can see this particular pasuk on today's daf has 5 articles on virtual Beitz Medrash, which is etzion.org.il, 3 pages on Halachapedia, 2 pages on Real Clear Daf, 1 page on Web Yeshiva, and these are external links that exist, right? So what are these things? How do these sites exist? These sites exist because they're using a tool that we call our Sefaria linker. So this is another bit of software that we created, a little bit of magic. What this tool does is automatically, if you install it on your website, anytime there's a particular citation, right? So you see over here, Psalm 90:17. If you highlight over it, you'll automatically get a preview of what that pasuk looks like. Joey's doing the math. Yes, 72.9% useful. I would say even more so useful, right? The math is not the equivalent of the whole. Right, so you have the ability, and we allow folks the ability to link Safari to their own webpage. And once that exists on our site, we offer partnerships to organizations to link their content back to Sefaria, right? So sites that have done it, you can see over there already, there's VBM, Halachapedia, Real Clear Def, Rabbi Yeshiva, Rabbi Sachs has his content linked to us on Sefaria as well, My Jewish Learning. So there are a lot of sites that are engaging this particular thing, and we want to sort of, I mean, our goal and our vision is really for Sefaria to be sort of a one-stop shop for Jewish learning more broadly, while recognizing that other folks want to right, when folks want to engage with the text on their own terms, in their own ways, in their own spaces, in that particular way. So that was a lot. Let me see if there's anything that I missed. I'm sure there is, because invariably there was. We have our calendars. We have this little save text feature here also. So one of the neat things is, let's say I find a particular text that I really like. I can just click this little save button, and now it's in my saved bookmarks to basically go back and look at any given moment. So it's a nice way also of a particular thing. Somebody asked earlier, and this ties in also nicely to what help does Sefaria need, why not? Somebody asked earlier, who funds it? Where is our funding from? Our funding comes from, on the one hand, viewers like you. So you can make a donation to Sefaria by clicking make a donation. You could also sponsor a day of Torah learning. So for example, no one sponsored today. When you sponsor a day of Torah learning, you get a little snippet over here that says today's learning is sponsored by whatever. Blessed. Forgive me. But we also have, in addition to that, right, so in addition to that, the vast majority of our funding is not from donors like you yet, although we hope it is one day soon. The vast majority of donors, excuse me, that's the wrong page. The vast majority of donors, particularly now as we're still in our startup-y sort of phase, the vast majority of our donors come from a number of large foundations, the William Davidson Foundation and the Jim Joseph Foundation being the two largest. The William Davidson Foundation, because they were the ones who liberated the Koran translation of the Talmud and paid for the engineering work to do that, and the other texts around it. So they have one of the few named texts on Sefaria, which is the William Davidson Talmud, which is the Hebrew and Aramaic version of the Talmud that exists on the sites, the Koran translation that's been liberated, and all of the other ancillary stuff that goes around it. And then a number of other funders for those of you who do Jewish educator stuff, you'll see it there. The Yemenite trope is not already on Sefaria, but it is online at the National Library of Israel, so which is where we're going to, God willing, borrow it from. So just the audio. Yeah, just the audio. I see people saying what and everything else. What help does Sefaria need? Sefaria is looking for help in the form of both, one, donations, but two, also, right, much of our text on much of our text on Sefaria comes from legitimate translations. So right, so if I click over here on Talmud, and we'll go to Masechet Shabbos, right, we click up over here, we could see that this version that we're looking at right now, our English version, is the William Davidson version of the Talmud. Let's say I don't like Koran, because I don't know why you wouldn't, but let's just say I don't like that particular translation. I can come in here and say, I only want to see the Sefaria community translation, right? So this is a translation that is crowdsourced for the good and bad that comes with crowdsourced translations, right? The vast majority of translations on Sefaria, about 83% of them right now, are not from crowdsourced. That is, 83% of translations come from books and quote unquote real translations. There's another 13% of text that exist in translations that are not there. Sometimes you'll see a community translation on a text that particularly doesn't have a translation. So like one place where we don't have a good translation already, excuse me, one place we do not have a good translation already yet We will, God willing, soon. We have the Zohar, right? And this Zohar translation is actually the Sefaria community translation. So this translation has been created by a number of users who have been translating the Zohar a little bit at a time, each day as they study, presumably. So for those who have the capacity and they see a pasuk that's not translated, where they see a particular segment of text that's not translated, feel free to translate it. And to do that, you just click on it, you click on translations, you click on tools, you click on add translation, and you can add a translation to it. And again, many of our translations happen to be locked, the ones that are in the books, but for the 17% of texts that are not, or the texts that only exist in Hebrew, if you'd like to add translations there, that's another way to get involved. Daniel, Matt has not yet given permission. It's mostly the publisher. We're working on stuff. We've got a whole long list of things. So that's one way that you can help. Another way that you can help is if you notice an error, you can click on the text, click this little feedback button, and give us some feedback. Tell us what's broken. Tell us what's not working. Tell us the translation is awful. We can make those translations also. So that's another particular way that you can help right there within our feedback thing. Other ways that you can help, you can use the site. You can use our code. You can do those things. Let us know when you do it. We love, love, love hearing from that. One of the best ways that you can help Sefaria, particularly if you already use source sheets, is to make those source sheets public, right? We appreciate you using source sheets and using them and sometimes even exporting them to other platforms. But if you want the Torah to be more widely shared, if you want our topics to work more effectively and efficiently, share your content. Super valuable to us and super valuable to other people who are using it. Those are the three big buckets of how folks can help us out on Sefaria in that particular way, right? Other questions, comments, complaints? I got 10 minutes. I want to get to those if I have to. Otherwise, I'll keep babbling.
Russell, when you're done, I think Rabbi Garth has a few questions, but we can save them for the end. Also, there was a comment that is Pocket Torah available for Android?
There's some funny things about that. God willing, it should be again soon. If somebody really needs it, have them email me. We can probably sideload the thing. But there's some politics related to the Google store that I have not yet worked out recently. But it will be, God willing, soon again.
Okay.
Any plans to
here's
have
a bunch of questions coming in, so I'll let you.
Any plans to have more how-to help on the site? So one of the best places to get how-to help on our site. We hope that our site is very easy to use and you do not need too much how-to helps. But we also have a series of facts down here at the bottom. And these include both what is Sefaria, how does it work, how can you contribute textually, how can you do other sorts of things, right? What are the various things? We have links for Sefaria educators. We have other sorts of things in that way. We also have a number of webinars that we run. So for those of you who are interested in getting more of a Sefaria 101 course or a Source Sheets 101 course or all those sorts of things, if you come to Sefaria and you come right over here on the Stay Connected page, you can sign up for a newsletter and you'll get all the feedback based on that. And oftentimes the folks who give those sessions are much better than me at giving those sessions because they're not engineers, they're on our education team, and they are much better educators than I think I happen to be. So that's the particular way also to do it that way in terms of frequently asked questions and other feedback that's on the site. We also have, I didn't show this before, but in addition to source sheets, we also have this page called groups. That is a organization or a user can create a specific group of source sheets. And those source sheets live then now as a collection. So one of the things we have is we have Sefaria Facts, Sefaria Stats, Sefaria Student Course, various other sorts of, I believe Sefaria 101 is on here also, right? So, so our Sefaria Facts that are on here also, which is a total of 16 different sheets, which basically will explain to you, how do I select the language on Sefaria? How do I find what I'm looking for? So these are all the questions in terms of specific questions you might have on Sefaria. They're all available here on the groups page under Sefaria Facts. So that's there in that particular way. Is the Siddur on Sefaria and the Machzor? We have multiple Siddurim and multiple Machzorim in our liturgy page. Of varying quality. They're undergoing a content review right now, so they'll be formatted a little bit. So we have Siddur Ashkenazi, Eidos Mizrahi, Sfard, several different Haggadahs that exist, bunch of high holidays, and there are commentaries on all these too also. So one of the neat things here also, if you click on a specific text and you click up here at the top, one of the things you're able to see also, when you're on a core text, you can see the commentaries that go along with it. So, right, so here's the Pesach Haggadah, and here are all the Haggadah commentaries that we have. I know it's not Pesach time, I didn't want to give anyone a heart attack, but this is another particular way to see what kind of commentaries exist on a site in addition to that. So our liturgy page right there, some folks who like to use Sefaria to daven. I don't suggest it. It's not really organized well for that. It's not terrible, but I've used it every once in a while. But it's mostly for reading on the screen in that particular way. So there's that particular context there. Other questions? I think it's how is the acceptance of Sefaria in Israel? Excellent question. So we have, right, for those, first of all, who prefer a modern Israeli interface. Are you not going to let me load? I'll have to log out. Give me a moment. We have, it's not letting me because it already knows that I prefer English, but I'm going to change that. For those who navigate to the site in Israel, you will be greeted with our default Hebrew page. You'll be greeted with our default Hebrew page, which is sefaria.org.il. It is the same exact site. Except with a completely Hebrew interface, right? So, and basically because it's a Hebrew interface, you just don't get any English translation, because apparently the worst thing in the world for Israelis is to see any English at all. But again, otherwise it's the same site, just reversed for you to have a Hebrew experience. And so that's the idea basically there. Our growth rate in Israel has been lately higher than our growth rate in America. In part, that's because we've been in America, right? Sefaria was started by Anglos, and particularly for it was not for Israelis. We did not target Israelis as our main and primary audience, and so. Because we did not target Israelis for our main and primary audience, they understandably, looked at the site and said, "Oh, this is for Golas Yidden," and that's fine and good. But we have now increasingly, as we've Hebraicized the site, as we have created Hebrew versions of the site, have increased the amount of Hebrew users who engage in Sefaria on a regular basis. Any thoughts on illustrations for various parts of the Mishnah? Yes. So we actually do have some illustrations that exist on the site already around, if you look at, for example, in the Seches Eruvin, or like in Rashi, in Rashi's commentary on Eruvin, I believe Rashi includes a number of drawings. We have those drawings on the site. We do want to have more images and media more broadly, specifically we want to have more of that explanatory stuff. The problem and challenge that we have at Sefaria is because we insist that the works on our site be licensed in a free culture license. It means that there are some publishers who don't want to play ball with us on copyrighted content that they believe that they still have life in and they can milk extra dollars out of, and that's their right. So we've had a lot of success when we pay publishers a lot of money to get texts, like our Quran translation, like our Talmud translation, or when we go to publishers who have texts that are out of print. So a lot of the first deals that we made with publishers were for texts that were published in the 60s, the 50s or 60s, that the publisher never had any indication of planning on printing it again. And we were able to liberate those texts and make them available another basically 70 years before the copyright still ran out on them. So still a good and valuable opportunity for us in that. Right, so that. Other questions? I think I've hit them all so far, if I didn't just comment again. Otherwise, Rabbi Garth, I think you have some.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm just curious. I have one question that I had that's sort of a little related to the Israel question is, if you have any sense of the demographics culturally, religiously on who's using this. Because I noticed when I look at who's making source sheets, I see people across the denominational spectrum, just judging by the names of
Yep.
people that I happen to know.
Yep.
But I also notice, like, when other institutions that I am connected to or learn with, I sense that, there's more comfort with Sefaria and maybe more the modern end of the modern Orthodox spectrum. And I don't know if that has to do with the fact that there are people making source sheets who are not, who are from other denominations, and that's
Sure.
for people who are not comfortable with pluralism. That's
Yeah. So Sefaria is a explicitly non-denominational project. Let me just start by saying that, right? We don't believe that texts, right? We don't believe that texts, Jewish texts, at least the traditional classical Jewish texts, have a particular denomination. So that's sort of the first thing there. Yeah, when you get into the source sheet and the user-generated content and the translations, and you get into user-generated content, you have issues theoretically around hashkafa. We every once in a while get an email from someone asking, why is this kafira on Sefaria? Why is this heresy on Sefaria? We get questions on why are there source sheets that have to do with like hashtag Me Too or racism, right? These aren't real Torah topics. These are whatever else it is, right? So we recognize that. I'd say that right, we know that folks who use Sefaria across the denominational spectrum, from atheists to Haredi Orthodox Jews, we have representation on our team, right? Our team at Sefaria has representation from Haredi Jews down through secular atheists and all across the spectrum. One of the things that I would say that, like, quote unquote knowledgeable Jews, and I use that in a broad context, like folks who know how to read Jewish texts, folks who are interested in Jewish text, are folks who are interested in Jewish text are overrepresented on Sefaria. And in part, that's because of the way in which the site was organized historically. And as we move to a way that allows for more novice users of text to engage via the topics pages and other sorts of things, we expect that dynamic to change a little bit. But on the whole, we actually have a fairly representational, right? The folks who navigate on Sefaria, both in Israel and in America, happen to be a fairly diverse cross-section and representative of the Jewish community more broadly. We probably skew slightly frommer, lowercase f, again, because those are the folks who tend to be interested in text. But it is not exclusive in that regard. And it's I would say that we know of lots of folks who, right, let me frame it this way. Every once in a while, we get messages from folks who are using Sefaria on a kosher phone, asking if we can get the most up-to-date version of the app on their kosher phone, because, right, the store that they use for their kosher phone doesn't have the up-to-date version of the app yet. So like we know that right, in terms of like right, whether or not some folks in organizational structures or organizational hierarchies have challenges with us, we know that the Oilim are using Sefaria more broadly. Yeah, so.
I was also just wondering if you could comment on, I know that in other parts of your life, you wear a hat of being an activist and doing things that are designed to shake people up and grab people's attention, and you're, I mean this in the most respectful possible way, a mischief maker. Okay, and I wonder if that attitude and disposition is something that influences your work at Sefaria.
I think so it's funny, right. Yes, I think is the short answer. Right, there's something radical and revolutionary about, right, first of all, about right, even just of liberating Jewish texts, right, of basically saying that we don't believe, yes, of course translators should get paid for their work, right, full stop, of course they should, the amount of time and effort and energy they do it, right, but they should get paid for their work once, or they should get paid for their work, and then that text should be the use of the Jewish people. Like, that's a radical view that flies in the face of the way in which right, copyright law certainly functions. It flies in the face of even Haskalah Gul, right, of Jewish laws on intellectual property in certain ways, right? So we recognize that, and I'd say, and right, but at the same time, right, I think it's a view that's deeply embedded in our tradition, right? One of my favorite texts is is when Rabban Gamliel gets thrown out as the head of the yeshiva, because and what happens is, right at the time, anyone who wanted to study at the yeshiva they had doorkeepers, they had guards at the gates of the yeshiva, and Rabbi Eliezer then got rid of the gatekeepers. They did away with the payment that was there, and it says, right, on that day, they increased the number of seats in the yeshiva by several hundred. And on that day, right, they say they learned, I can't remember the specific tractate right now, but it's something that's particularly esoteric. And they say on that day, right, everyone was able to, there was not a single question that went unanswered in the yeshiva that day. Right, and so how is it, right, Rashi comments, how is it that there was not a single question that went unanswered? And Rashi comments and basically says, as you increase the number of students, you increase the pill pool, you increase the Talmudic dialogue, and you increase the capacity for learning, right? And so for me, right, that's what we want in Jewish education. That's what we want in Judaism, right? We want a robust conversation around text that is happening not just in the past, but is happening in the modern era. And the only way to do that, quite frankly, is to democratize these tools. And right, so we do that for better and for worse. Right, at the same time, we do that, right? I can get on Sefaria, my source sheet, right, could theoretically be ranked higher than Rav Garth's, even as Rav Garth is a eminently more qualified Torah scholar than I am. And on the one hand, I just 100%. And while that's right, on the one hand, that's great and wonderful for the Jews. There's also some challenges with that, right? And it's one of the things that we focus on in Sefaria. How do we separate the wheat from the chaff, right? How do we, right, even at the most basic and obvious level, how do we keep the Messianic Jews off of Sefaria? Or should we keep the Messianic Jews off of Sefaria, right? How do we deal with the kafira if there is kafira? How do we deal with other things like that? And so on and so forth. So it's a challenge for sure in terms of both our approach and how we deal with it. But yeah, so it's we try not to answer those questions on a regular basis if we don't have to. But I can tell you, our staff meeting today, we had a long conversation about, one of the things that's interesting about having the Talmud in translation available on the site is, like, there's some parts of the Talmud that, take it out of context, don't look particularly good to the Jews, right? If you talk about the Talmudic passages on boiling Jesus in feces, right? Like, that's not something that looks super great for the Jews, taken out of context, right? If you look at the Talmudic text, the halacha in Masechet Ketubot on child brides, right? If you don't understand the context of that, you might think, OMG, right? Judaism condones having sex with children, right? And so anti-Semites, as they've been wont to do for years on end, right, will take context and cut and paste. And do we as Sefaria have responsibility in that context? Should we be putting apologetics on the site for texts that we know are problematic texts? Should we leave them? What should we do with them, etc.? And that was a conversation, for example, that we had today in today's staff meeting. So, like, these are things that we wrestle with on a regular basis as we try to design interfaces and push things out there, and hopefully all these things are invisible to you and it's just a good experience. But there's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes.
So I don't know. I'm now forgetting what time we said this was going till. But
Yeah.
You say it was 1 hour. Are we over time?
I don't recall. I'm happy to talk forever, but
but
feel free to let people go if they
I'll
want to go.
I mean, you named a couple of, I think, what sound like very real sort of ethical and technical challenges in terms of, what are the other, I guess, where are the things that you would like to see Sefaria doing, either things that you'd like to change about what you're already doing, or new projects that you would like to see in the pipes?
So one of the things that I think we want to be doing is we want to be a place where Jews don't only consume Torah, but where Torah is being created. And so that's happening already a little bit, but we want to have more of that. So we're revamping our source sheet editor. That has been, and our editor for creating user-generated content on Sefaria. That's been my project for the last, I think, 6 months now. We finally have an alpha version of that out, which you saw flash across the screen. As I said, you're not supposed to see that. So we have an alpha version of that out now, which should be out in the next 18 months. And that will hopefully allow folks to create content in Sefaria that isn't just paper code, isn't just source sheet content. It'll be for more longer form stuff too, right? One of the things that I keep on articulating is I would love it. it's probably not for this Simchas Torah, but next Simchas Torah, if right, we ran a campaign that basically said, okay, right, the last mitzvah in the Torah says that you should write your own Torah. And so we at Sefaria are going to help you do that this year, right? We're going to nag you every single week to write your little commentary, 500 words, maybe no more than that, maybe less, on like what you think the weekly Parsha is about. And by the end of the year, you will have your weekly Parsha that we can send to you using print-on-demand technologies. Usually you'll have your commentary that will be available to the world that we can send to you using print-on-demand technologies. And we know at Sefaria, we're going to get a bunch of really not interesting commentaries, but then there'll be several, there might be a handful of real, who knows if the next Ramban or the next Rashi is sitting out there just waiting to sort of come out there. And so we want to have opportunities to create those things out there. One of the things I said, like we launched just this week, this Sefaria contest for engineers. Don't load that page. You shouldn't see that one either. The Sefaria, so like, right, moving into a space where we're having the community contribute more to also the kinds of work that are happening over there. One of the places we might move to that we've begun to experiment with is also what does it look like to have a base medrash on Sefaria? What does it look like to do video learning, either with the Chavruta or with a more broader thing? So there is if you sign up for that newsletter, which if you haven't, you should, coming very soon, there will be a fun little test of a one-off little pop-up experience using video. That was a project that I created also. So lots of things like that.
And actually, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that there's a question in the chat from Phyllis and Jack Shapiro that dovetails nicely with your thing about learning.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Fine. Yeah, we do not yet have the interfaces built out for running classes. The way that classes get run on Sefaria is people put a couple of source sheets together. So if, for example, someone were to create if someone had a course on Sofrut already, on Sofrus, and they had YouTube videos that were attached to it, they could put that in as a source sheet and it would be available and we could link it up, no problem. In terms of us creating content, Sefaria actually doesn't create a ton of content by itself. We do a lot of engineering work to allow for that to happen. We do, when text, right, we are much more, our desire is to give kavod and to give, and to take translations that have already been done when they're available. That's not to say we don't do our own translations. Our Sefer Chinuch is our own internal translation that was done in Sefaria because we couldn't find one that we liked and that was available to us. Several portions of our midrashic collections are translated on our own. But we actually don't do most. I mean, it's funny. People often say, the Sefaria translation says, nah. And these translations, again, they're not actually mostly Sefaria translations. They're translations that Sefaria has liberated. And again, you can look at where the translation actually comes from by clicking on the particular title page, and you'll see immediately, right, this translation comes from, this English translation, where'd it go? Oh, I hit back, that's the problem. This English translation of the Mishnah is from, where are you? Versions, there we are. This particular version is from Rabbi Dr. Joshua Kolb, right? So not every translation on Sefaria, most of the translation on Sefaria, most of the content is not unique to us. So while I think would welcome the opportunity for folks to do learning experiences on the site, we probably will not be the ones who are facilitating that, aside from designing the tools and platforms that would allow folks to do that.
Thank you, Russell. This has really been very, very fascinating. I have to say, as someone who uses Sefaria literally 6 days a week, not 7, but 6 days a week, I actually learned about tools and tricks that I didn't know about. So probably has to do with the fact that things keep coming online, so I really appreciated this. I got a lot out of this. I also want to just, earlier, Russell, you mentioned that one of the ways that people can support Sefaria is actually by donating, by contributing to the work, and I really encourage everyone to do that. It's Sefaria is one of the
I'd also like to point out that this session is being sponsored by Base Aid, and for those who wish to make a donation to them as well, also you should consider doing so.
That was actually where I was about to go next.
Sweet.
Was in addition to supporting Sefaria, I would really encourage everyone who's enjoyed. First of all, thank everyone who joined the session, and encourage you, if you enjoyed what you saw here, to support Sefaria and to support Base Aid. And I'm pasting into the chat the link to the page where you can find other online learning and davening opportunities through Base Aid during COVID-19. And I really want to thank Russell so much for your time and your sharing your unique perspective and as an insider behind the scenes at Sefaria. And I want to thank Ruth for skillfully managing the call, and the host is doing their job if you don't realize that they're doing anything. So the fact that we didn't have any major technical incidents is thanks to Ruth. And thank you everyone for joining us. And
I just add one last thing. I'm sorry, Rabbi Garth. I just want to add one last thing. That is, I know I speak like an ex-New Yorker a mile a minute, and I know I click through like a million different things. So if you have any other questions, feel free to email me. I just chatted my email address, and if you'll scroll up above, the source sheet that has some of the links to content on Sefaria that we've talked about today and other sorts of things are available there as well. So feel free to take those two things down, and I'm happy to answer questions or push you to the person on the team who could answer those questions. And again, thank you to Base Aid, which is best shul in St. Louis. And I look forward to seeing all of you again, God willing, speedily, back in shul again. So God willing.
And I can't top that, but I will say there was a question about how to access the recording of this session. We will email it out to participants. We have your emails from when you registered. We'll also put a link. I'll show you where it is on the website. We'll put it up so that you can refer to this as many times as you'd like. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you, Russell. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, and everyone.
Hope everyone stays well and safe.
Have an easy fast tomorrow, and we'll see you soon.
Good night.